Here's something nobody wants to admit about the restaurants we miss. We didn't stop loving them because the food went bad overnight. We stopped because the value quietly vanished. Prices climbed, portions shrank, quality slipped, and the place that once felt like home wasn't worth the money anymore. So when 15 of these dead and dying chains announce comebacks in 2026, the real question isn't whether they'll reopen, it's whether they'll bring back what we actually missed. Most won't. Number 15, Krystal. For generations across the South, Krystal was the little square slider you grabbed late at night, cheap, hot, and unmistakable. Then the math caught up. Krystal filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2020, closed underperforming stores, and got passed between owners chasing a turnaround. Now the brand talks about stabilizing and growing again. But the people steering Krystal today are managing a balance sheet, not a griddle. The original magic was a cheap idea sold generously to working families. When new owners rebuild it, they keep the logo and the nostalgia, but the price creeps up and the slider gets smaller every year. That's the exact trade that emptied the parking lots in the first place. A comeback built on cutting costs can't sell a feeling that was built on generosity. The square burger comes back. The reason people loved it does not. Commenters say it bluntly. They want real food at a fair price, not a familiar name stretched thinner to hit somebody's margin target. Which brings us to a chain that didn't just shrink. It vanished completely, then promised to rise from the dead. Number 14, Chi-Chi's. This is the boldest comeback on the list because Chi-Chi's didn't fade. Every single American location closed back in 2004 after bankruptcy collided with a deadly hepatitis A outbreak tied to the brand, one of the worst in US restaurant history. For 2 decades, it survived only as a grocery aisle salsa and chip label owned by Hormel. Then, in 2025, a relative of an original founder struck a deal with Hormel to bring the actual restaurants back, aiming to reopen starting around 2026. On paper, it's a beautiful nostalgia story. In reality, it's the hardest possible relaunch. The casual Mexican space today is a war zone of Chipotle. Fast casual upstarts and local taquerias that deliver more flavor for less money. Chi-Chi's is selling a memory from the 1990s to customers who now expect fresh, fast, and cheap, and who may not even know the name. Memory fills a dining room exactly once. The second visit has to win on value, and that's a fight this brand last won before half its target customers were even born. Reopening is the easy part. Staying open is where the nostalgia runs out and the receipts start to matter. Speaking of brands drowning in their own past, the next one collapsed in public. Number 13, Boston Market. You heard this name and probably felt a pang. Boston Market once ran more than 1,000 locations, selling warm rotisserie chicken and the feeling of a home-cooked meal you didn't have to cook. Then it collapsed in a brutal, public way. Evictions, lawsuits from suppliers, unpaid landlords, and stores going dark almost overnight with the doors chained shut and the parking lots growing weeds. Now, ownership talks about a turnaround. But you cannot rebuild trust you've already burned with the exact partners you need most. Vendors who got stiffed don't extend credit again. Landlords who got sued don't hand over prime real estate. And customers who once drove up to a locked door don't come back for a third disappointment. The thing that killed Boston Market wasn't the chicken, which people genuinely loved. It was the broken promises behind the counter, to staff, to suppliers, to everyone. A revival that doesn't fix those broken promises is just a fresh coat of paint on the same empty building. The brand can return. The reliability that made it worth visiting can't be faked back into existence. Now to a name that practically invented the casual American bar and grill. Number 12. Bennigan's. In 2008, thousands of Bennigan's workers showed up to find the company-owned locations padlocked with no warning, casualties of a parent company's sudden bankruptcy. The Irish-American grill that defined Friday night casual dining nearly vanished overnight. For years now, a new ownership group has promised to bring it roaring back with new formats, smaller footprints, and international franchise expansion. But the casual sit-down bar and grill category isn't struggling because of Bennigan specifically. It's struggling because the whole format is in slow, steady decline. People who used to spend 2 hours and $40 on potato skins and a sampler platter now grab something faster and cheaper, or just stay home. Bennigan's isn't really fighting its old self. It's fighting a customer habit that has already moved on without it. You can relaunch a brand in a season. You cannot relaunch a decade of changed behavior. Reviving a format the market walked away from is the most expensive kind of optimism there is, because the audience already voted with their wallets, and they voted to stay home, which leads us straight to another grill chasing the very same ghost. Number 11. TGI Fridays. Once the loud neon temple of loaded appetizers, mozzarella sticks, and flair, TGI Fridays filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in late 2024 and shut a wave of underperforming American restaurants. Now it's restructuring and insisting the iconic brand will fight on. But look at what actually killed it. The same private equity-driven playbook customers complain about constantly. Financial engineering stacked on a tired, aging menu in a category that's bleeding traffic year after year. When a chain like this comes back, the owners rarely reinvest in better food. They cut deeper to make the numbers work for investors and lenders. That's the exact death spiral your audience describes over and over. Raise prices to survive, and in doing so, push away the very customers you needed to survive. A reorganized Fridays running the same math is just a slower version of the same ending, with the same frozen tasting apps at a higher price. The red and white stripes on the awning stay. The actual reason to drive there does not. You can reorganize the debt, but you can't reorganize that reputation. Now to a sandwich empire that fell harder and faster than almost anyone on this list. Number 10. Quiznos. At its peak in the mid-2000s, Quiznos had somewhere around 5,000 toasted sub shops and genuinely looked like a threat to dethrone Subway. Then it imploded, crushed by brutal franchisee disputes over the high cost of supplies, a 2014 bankruptcy, and a collapse to a tiny sliver of its former size. Now owners float revival ideas. Ghost kitchens, smaller stores, a comeback for that signature toasted sub. But Quiznos didn't just lose customers. It lost the trust of its franchisees, and that trust is the engine a sandwich chain runs on. The operators who got squeezed told their stories loudly, and the brand became a cautionary tale for anyone thinking about franchising. Meanwhile, Subway, Jersey Mike's, and Jimmy John's swallowed every inch of shelf space Quiznos abandoned. A real comeback needs operators willing to bet their life savings on you, and Quiznos burned through that goodwill years ago. The sub itself was never the problem. The system underneath it was, and the people who got burned haven't forgotten. A broken system can rebrand all at once. It almost never rebuilds. Now, to a steakhouse a lot of you said, in the comments, you'd miss the most. Number 9. Sizzler. On videos exactly like this one, Sizzler comes up again and again as the chain people miss the most. The Sunday after church steak and the salad bar that made a modest dinner feel like an occasion. Sizzler filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2020 as the pandemic gutted dine-in overnight, and it emerged smaller, quieter, and far less visible. Now it's trying to hold on and slowly rebuild. But the format itself is the trap. The all-you-can-eat salad bar and the affordable sit-down steakhouse are two of the hardest models to run profitably in this economy. Squeezed between rising beef and produce costs and customers who now flinch at the final bill. To make a buffet steakhouse pay today, you either raise the price until the value quietly disappears or cut the spread until the magic disappears. Either way, you lose the exact thing people are nostalgic for. Sizzler can reopen its doors tomorrow. What it can't easily reopen is the era when a family steak dinner out actually felt affordable. And the people who miss Sizzler most are often the ones on fixed incomes, the exact customers a price hike chases away first. Now to the buffet that didn't even survive long enough to limp into a recovery. Number 8, Souplantation. Also known as sweet tomatoes, this fresh buffet favorite permanently closed every single location in 2020, when the pandemic made self-serve buffets look radioactive and its parent company collapsed into bankruptcy. Fans have been begging for a return ever since, and ownership has openly floated the idea of bringing it back someday. But Souplantation died from the single hardest thing in the entire industry to revive: the communal self-serve buffet. The model that made it special, endless fresh soup and salad you scooped yourself, is exactly the model that's most expensive to staff, hardest to keep profitable, and most fragile the moment food and labor costs rise. Bringing back a sprawling buffet in this economy means fighting the same math that beat far healthier companies. The love for Souplantation is real, loud, and genuinely touching. But love doesn't lower the price of produce, and it doesn't cut the cost of the labor it takes to keep a 100-foot salad bar fresh all day. Affection is not a business model, and a buffet is the one format where affection and arithmetic almost never agree. Now to a chain that's technically still alive, but spiritually running on life support. Number 7, Steak and Shake. Steak and Shake hasn't filed a dramatic bankruptcy, but it has quietly shut hundreds of locations and gutted its own identity, converting restaurants to self-service ordering kiosks and a franchise partner model designed mainly to slash labor costs. The owners call it a reinvention. A lot of longtime customers call it the quiet end of the thing they loved. The whole appeal was a sit-down diner experience, a real steak burger and a hand-dipped milkshake brought to your table at a fair price. Strip out the table service, replace the friendly counter with a touchscreen, and you've kept the famous sign while surgically removing the soul. This is the revival trap in its purest form. The chain survives on paper by deleting the exact experience that made people want to walk in. A cheaper, colder, self-serve Steak and Shake isn't a comeback at all. It's a slow goodbye with healthier margins for the owner. And when the only thing left standing is the logo over the door, customers eventually stop pretending it's the same place they remember, and they stop showing up. Now to a burger legend trying to franchise its way back from the brink. Number 6, Fuddruckers. Once proudly billed as the home's greatest hamburgers, with its build-your-own toppings bar and its butcher shop theater of fresh ground beef, Fuddruckers faded badly as its parent company wound down. And the brand was eventually sold to a new owner betting everything on a franchise-driven revival. The vision is more locations and a fresh start. The obstacle is the calendar. The better burger lane that Fuddruckers helped invent is now jammed with Five Guys, Shake Shack, In-N-Out loyalists, and a dozen strong regional favorites that already own the premium burger conversation. Fuddruckers is trying to reintroduce a 1980s idea into a 2026 fight it no longer leads or even ranks in. And every new franchisee has to believe the old brand can outburger competitors who never went away and never stopped improving. A comeback that depends on out-executing fresher, better-funded rivals on their own home turf is a steep climb. The toppings bar was iconic, but icons don't win on memory alone. They win on whether the burger you serve today beats the burger being served next door. Now to a roast beef chain quietly attempting the exact opposite of a splashy relaunch. Number 5. Roy Rogers. Here's a genuinely rare one. Roy Rogers, the roast beef and fried chicken chain that once had hundreds of locations before shrinking to a small fraction, is owned by a family that has been carefully, patiently re-expanding rather than chasing a giant nostalgia splash. That patience is actually its single best shot at survival. And it still faces the same brutal headwind as everyone else here. To grow at all, Roy Rogers needs new franchisees to invest serious money in a brand most younger customers have never heard of. Inside a fast food market dominated by giants with billion-dollar advertising budgets. Going slow and steady avoids the spectacular flameout that kills the flashier comebacks on this list, but it also means the brand stays small, regional, and largely invisible while the rest of the world barely notices it exists. The smartest revival here might survive precisely because it isn't loudly promising to take over America. But survival and a comeback aren't the same word. Quietly hanging on is admirable. It just isn't the triumphant national return the headlines and the nostalgia like to imagine. Now to a name synonymous with the golden age of the all-you-can-eat buffet. Number 4. Old Country Buffet. The sprawling, endless buffet empire that included Old Country Buffet and Hometown Buffet went bankrupt and watched nearly all of its locations close. A direct casualty of the same forces now hammering every self-serve concept in the country. Every so often, there's talk of reviving the old buffet name. But this is arguably the single most doomed category on this entire list. The Grand American Buffet was built on one promise that has become economically impossible: unlimited food at a price ordinary families could actually afford. Food costs have surged, labor has gotten expensive and hard to find, and the only way left to make the numbers work is to thin out the spread or quietly raise the price until the entire point evaporates. Customers who remember towering mountains of food for a few dollars will walk in once, see a smaller, sadder buffet at a bigger price, and walk right back out for good. You cannot revive the feeling of abundance in an era of scarcity pricing. The buffet's death was never really a branding problem. It was a math problem. And no logo refresh in history has ever solved basic arithmetic. Now to the chain that practically defined the family ice cream stop for half a century. Number 3. Friendly's. For New Englanders especially, Friendly's was the after-the-game sundae, the birthday fribble, the worn vinyl booth where 2 generations grew up. Then it went through bankruptcy more than once, closed hundreds of restaurants, and shrank to a shadow as new owners tried to stabilize whatever was left. The intention to keep Friendly's alive is real and even sincere. The trap, once again, is the format. A sit-down ice cream and diner concept carries all the heavy cost of a full-service restaurant while competing against cheaper, faster dessert options and grocery store pints that cost a tiny fraction of a Friendly's sundae. To make that fragile model work on a spreadsheet, owners trim the menu, raise the prices, and slim down the staff. And the cozy experience that made it special erodes a little more every year. Friendly's can keep its doors open for a while. Keeping its actual warmth alive is the far harder fight. And warmth has never once shown up as a line item on a cost reduction spreadsheet. The booths remain bolted to the floor. The feeling is what's quietly slipping out the back door now to the brand whose beloved dine-in version basically died years ago, even as its logo lived on everywhere. Number 2, Pizza Hut. The classic red roof Pizza Hut, the one with the salad bar, the dim hanging lamps, the checkered tablecloths, and the arcade game in the corner, is now almost completely extinct as a sit-down experience, even though the brand still sells pizza on practically every corner. A major franchisee's bankruptcy shuttered hundreds of locations, and the dine-in format collapsed almost entirely in favor of delivery and carry-out. Now there's warm, nostalgic talk about bringing the classic dine-in hut experience back to life. But the cold economics that killed it haven't changed one bit. A full dine-in restaurant costs dramatically more to staff, light, and run than a stripped-down delivery kitchen, and customers already proved, with their own wallets, that they'd rather just get the pizza at home. Reviving the red roof experience means deliberately rebuilding the most expensive version of a business that already figured out the cheap version works better and prints more money. Nostalgia wants the booth and the personal pan pizza. The balance sheet wants the delivery driver. And when nostalgia and the balance sheet go to war, the balance sheet always wins. Now to the single biggest comeback story of them all. Number 1, Red Lobster. This is the one absolutely everyone is watching right now. Red Lobster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2024, closed dozens of locations, and became the poster child for everything your comments rage about. Years earlier, owners had sold off the chain's valuable real estate in a sale-leaseback deal, leaving the restaurants paying rent on the very buildings they used to own, exactly the private equity move commenters blame for killing the brands they loved. Then, the infamous endless shrimp promotion bled money at a staggering rate. Now Red Lobster has emerged from bankruptcy under brand new ownership and a sharp new CEO publicly promising a serious turnaround. And to their credit, there's real effort and talent here, more than most names on this list can claim. But the original wound never fully healed. That sale-leaseback rent is still a heavy weight around the company's neck. And the casual seafood category is expensive to operate and easy for stretched customers to skip the moment budgets tighten. A talented new leader can fix the menu, the marketing, and the mood. What's far harder is undoing a financial trap that somebody else quietly set years before they ever arrived. Red Lobster's comeback isn't fake. It's just doomed to fight a brutal math problem it didn't create. And that is the exact lesson hiding quietly inside all 15 of these stories. Every revival here sells the logo, not the restaurant we missed. Subscribe for the truth behind the brands you loved.